Hello, I'm Tylah Tully, and today I'm joined by Trajan Scientific and Medical Vice President of Clinical Solutions, Corinna Rockenbach. Corinna, thanks so much for being here today. I think a good place to start before we jump into it is, can you explain what Trajan's Mitra technology is and how it works?
Thanks for having me. Mitra microsampling is a very simple device that you can use to take a small sample of blood directly from your finger, and then it dries, and you can drop it into the post and mail it in for additional lab-developed tests.
So Mitra has moved from early adoption to mainstream use. What were the specific milestones or market shifts that enabled this transition?
Yes, I think there were a few reasons that Mitra has moved more mainstream. One of the first was during the COVID-19 pandemic, there was a real need for at-home testing, not just for COVID-19, but for monitoring of chronic diseases, for wellness testing. And so many different companies and healthcare providers were looking for options. And I think during that time as well, it became much easier and people realized, oh, this is not so difficult to do. So a lot of those challenges that had originally had been thrown up about at-home testing came more into the mainstream during that time. Additionally, Mitra had been around for about 5 years at that point. And so we at that had about 5 years of about publications, about 500 publications. And so that we're seeing across a wide range of applications, not just serology, infectious disease testing, but also biomarker testing, for clinical trials, for general wellness testing. And so many different applications became more mainstream. And so we saw a lot more adoption. And then I would say the third reason that Mitra became more mainstream was that the NIH, the National Institute of Health in the US, had published a 10,000 person cohort study, a serology study, where they had less than 1% rejection rate. For such a large cohort, I think it really impressed a lot of people that this could be an easily adopted microsampling device for large-scale studies and for routine monitoring.
So what is the practical impact of Mitra on patient experience, especially for sensitive populations like infants and children, and how does it improve healthcare equity and access?
So if you can imagine, for many young people, they could be afraid of needles, going in for a major blood draw, or they may need to be at school. And so scheduling those appointments takes them away from school and sports, or they could have, as I mentioned, that fear of needles. So being able to do that at-home testing that's relatively pain-free is a huge advantage for those vulnerable populations. So for pediatrics, as well as for the elderly who may not be able to easily get to a clinic. Additionally, there are many rural populations that are not able to get into a clinic nearby. So the ability to test from home really allows them to have a better quality of life. Finally, there are many chronic diseases that require monitoring. And many of these chronic diseases, they may be immunocompromised, such as those that have had a transplant, or those that need to be monitored, for example, for anti-epileptic drugs. And so if they are able to do that from home, it can be a much better quality of life and also protect those populations.
Looking forward, what are the next key markets or clinical applications you are targeting for the broader adoption of Mitra?
Yes. So what we're finding is there's significant potential out of just besides just blood testing. So there's an interest, for example, of doing urine testing, sampling tears, as well as doing additional serum or plasma samples from those clinical hospital labs to a central lab. And so we'll be looking at expanding Mitra's use outside of just simple blood collection and into other alternative fluids. We're finding that there are a wider range of applications that could be used. So we are anticipating a lot of these studies have gone beyond just a feasibility study now into health economics studies where they're finding that this could really benefit from a cost savings perspective as well as their patients.
Corinna, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a fascinating discussion.
Thank you so much.
For more ASX news and analysis, subscribe below.